Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, January 11th, 2018 meeting of the Northampton School Committee. I'm Mayor David Narkowitz, the chair of the school committee. I'll begin by asking the clerk to call the roll, please.
Ms. Molly Burnham.
Present.
Ms. Rebecca Dudansky.
Present.
Ms. Laura Fallon. Present. Ms. Ann Densky. Present. Mr. Ronnie Costa.
Present.
Mr. Darren Meyer.
Present.
Mr. Howard Moore. Ms. Susan Strauss.
Here.
Mr. Edward Zahowski.
Present.
And Mayor David Narkowitz.
Present. Thank you very much. Because this is the first meeting of our new session as a body, we have some.
Sound's not on.
Is the sound? It's working. Okay. Okay. We have some organizational votes that are required as part of our beginning the new term. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of our rules of procedure. I would entertain a motion to adopt our current rules.
Move to adopt the rules of procedure.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the rules of procedure are adopted. The next order of business is the election of a vice chair of the school committee. And I would ask for a motion to open nominations.
Move to open the floor for nominations.
Is there a second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the floor is open. I would now entertain any nominations for vice chair. Ms. Fallon.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Zahowski.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion to close the floor to nominations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? So we have one candidate for vice chair. Does the candidate wish to say anything in his defense?
I do not, other than to thank the committee for entrusting this position, our school committee, on myself, and I thank you for the nomination and your support. And I'll do that again after the vote.
Okay. So given that there's only one candidate, it'll simply be a yes or no vote. So all those in favor of electing Edward Zahowski as our vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposition, I should say? Opposed or any abstentions? Okay, so it's unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. It means a lot to me.
Next, we have to elect our executive secretary. And so I will, I'm being, what's that?
Superintendent. Is the superintendent?
The superintendent.
Yeah. It's the executive.
Okay, so you're the executive secretary. So, fine. So, all those in favor of the, well, do you want to make a motion, Mr. Vice Chair?
I'll make a motion for the election of the executive secretary of Dr. John Provost.
Second.
Second, okay. I think this was like 10 years ago we did this, sorry. Okay, all those in favor of Dr. Provost serving as our executive secretary, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next is to set our annual meeting schedule. You do have a copy of a proposed annual meeting schedule, and I know some notations were made relative to some of the special timing relative to key conferences and other potential conflicts. Does anyone have any questions about the schedule as proposed? Do you want to make a motion on that and we can put it on the floor?
Make a motion to set the annual meeting schedule as proposed.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions about that?
I just want to know if that will be available online for the public.
As soon as when it's approved, yes, it'll be put up on the.
Well, because I think currently, doesn't it say it's always on the second Thursday of each month, and now it's not. So I think we would have to put the whole schedule.
Right?
Yep.
It's on the, okay.
Yeah.
I think we always do.
Yeah. There are a couple of meetings that fall not on Thursdays because of conflicts with other conferences and things.
And also noted that I think there's a budget meeting that's been moved up to give more time for discussion. Is that?
It actually has been moved so that it will not coincide with February vacation.
February break, and I just wanted to say that was a great thing to do.
Okay, so there's been a motion made and seconded to approve our annual meeting schedule. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So that completes our organizational process. I will just note for the record that today I did send out a memo with appointments to the various subcommittees, so you should have received that, and that will also be updated to our website to update the public on who's serving on the various subcommittees. So next we will move into the public comment period. And I do have a list. I would ask people when they speak to please state their name and address for the record. I will be using a 3-minute timer. Ask you to please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And I would also just ask, given some of the potential comments tonight, to please honor confidentiality and to refrain from discussing specific families' educational or medical information. So the first person who has signed up this evening is Cindy Mahoney.
Is this okay? My name is Cindy Mahoney, and I live at 77 Emerson Way. Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. Well, education is wicked local. In fact, the face of it sits across from me at dinner each night, and that little face looks dejected. The implementation of WINS at Bridge Street makes me feel like a little kid on the playground at recess, where the bigger kids change the rules, and I don't know what's going on, and now I, too, am confused, frustrated, and sad. In December, our daughter's team met, and plans were made for significant improvements to her IEP delivery. It is galling, though, that since school began August 30th, it took nearly 4 months before this happened. The frustration and confusion our child experienced since the start of the school year will take time for her to recover from. From her perspective, several months of high anxiety and occasionally traumatic situations mean that trust in the system won't be restored overnight. The implementation of WINS at Bridge this fall has in many cases been reactive instead of proactive, an approach my grandmother would call bass-ackward. The rushed implementation means that staff are reassigned as problems crop up instead of anticipating needs and having plans in place. It can feel a bit like a game of whack-a-mole, which is not a positive metaphor when working with children. My child and I have each witnessed occasions where staff are going from situation to situation as the needs of children spike around the building. Should any member of the committee wish, I would be happy to provide specific details that we have observed, but I don't want to do so in this public forum. I do wonder about children who face social and emotional challenges and how shifting and reassigning staff affects their educational progress. Disruptions in the classroom, cafeteria, and hallways impact all students throughout the school. With a new program, bumps are to be expected, but not a consistent systemic failure. Bumps are when there's a stomach bug and there's a few days of being short-staffed. Several months of staff scrambling and reacting is not a thoughtful approach to inclusion. Our child was part of a group sent to Bridge specifically for the ASD program. The teachers and staff at Bridge are committed to their jobs, and we appreciate their efforts. However, this year it feels as though the administration went back on a promise of support. A Northampton CPAC parent mentioned a program called the Nurtured Heart Approach, and in a book by Howard Glasser et al. Titled The Old Rules, one passage struck me. Inclusion, or working with challenging children within the mainstream classroom setting, can be achieved, but not without clarity. Without clarity, inclusion is more like exclusion. So when inclusion is implemented without proper planning and clear guidelines, students are at risk of being alienated rather than incorporated into the classroom. As you think about budget planning for next year, please keep in mind the need for adequate, consistent staffing throughout the building. Remember that grandmother I mentioned? Her last name was Murphy, and the first rule of Murphy's Law is anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So just as we have car insurance for unforeseen circumstances, funds need to be allocated for staffing insurance to prevent the difficulties experienced by many students and families and staff at the beginning of this school year. Having concrete plans and funding in place for contingencies will ensure a better educational experience for all, because as President Obama said, stuff happens.
Thank you. The next person who's signed up is Dan Peters.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to thank the Bridge Street School teachers for what they have done for my children. My son is on his 6th teacher, and he's going to be graduating. My daughter's on her 3rd. This past Monday, I catered the Fitzwillies party, and as I'm loading up my vehicle, my son pointed out that Calvin Coolidge had his office above Fitzwillies. I didn't know that. I thought that was pretty cool that his 5th grade teacher is actually teaching the connection with Northampton in his school. And that happens regularly, not just with him, but also with my daughter, Alexa. And so to the teachers, I applaud you in the audience. Thank you for doing that. And I'm sorry I don't have enough time to recognize all of you. But obviously, I've been in discussions with the Bridge Street School parents, and I'm upset with it. I've read the article in the Gazette. But there's another aspect here that needs to be mentioned. Teachers are doing the best they can. I totally get that. But what they are given is really, really hard. And what is not recognized is how it impacts their livelihood. Teachers are evaluated on 4 standards, as Dr. Provost knows. And 2 of those important standards are 2B-1, providing a safe environment, and 2C-2, maintaining a respectful environment. It's incredibly hard for them to do that. It's incredibly hard for them to do their job. And that comes from the top. They're not told necessarily how to do that. They're given their directive from the principal or the superintendent, and then having to carry out those orders. And so they have to deal the best with what they got. So it doesn't just impact the school and the quality of the education and the safety of the students. It also impacts your teacher's livelihood. And that's huge, because the better their livelihood is, the better education my own children will get. And I hope you understand that, because that's based upon DESE standards. And again, that starts at the top. You know, the administrative rubric, 2-A-3, I think it's student safety, health, and social and emotional needs. You know, that's from the management and operations rubric. So it comes from there on the way down. You know, as a point, you know, I've been privy to situations that have happened with my own son and his friends, and tried to be generic, to respect the mayor and what he said. At one point, one of my son's best friends had his diabetic monitor ripped out of his system and thrown into the bushes. That happened last year. This year, he was sexually harassed by given an explicit picture diagrammed with body parts and gestures and descriptions about what was happening. And I could go into further detail, but I don't want to. Now, if we're referencing the Me Too movement, well, it's happening in your school based upon the conditions that you are creating. And you have to have these teachers carry out education and safety. I'm sorry, but there's something missing here. And with all due respect, my teachers for my kids do a darn good job. And the more that you allow them to concentrate on what they do within the classroom, the better the education my 2 kids will get at Bridge Street, excuse me. And so, again, Bridge Street teachers, thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you. The next person signed up is Ronnie Gold.
Hi. My name is Ronnie Gold, 15 Linden Street, Northampton. I'm a Bridge Street parent. I'm on the Bridge Street School Council. I'm active in the PTO, and I'm also a public school teacher in Springfield. I've taught elementary school for 15 years. I have been a school union rep, and I'm a very strong supporter of unions. I'm here today to share my extreme sadness and anger with the article that came out in the Gazette today, which unfairly painted a very troubling picture at Bridge Street School at an especially critical time when many families are making decisions about their child's next year's schooling. I'm sad because the extreme challenges of the district-imposed new inclusion program is the sole story that was told, and doesn't include all the amazing things about our school and I hope that prospective and current parents get to know that at Bridge, some of the amazing things are we have an incredible music teacher who worked to get a donation of ukuleles for a brand new program, that we have a super innovative 5th grade teacher who has set up a whole classroom economy to help make learning exciting, that our principal goes out of the box to inspire her students, including dyeing her hair blue for a readathon recently, and that our PTO is an amazing community builder, organizing events all the time, including an upcoming annual science fair, that my daughter's kindergarten teacher last year was too good, actually, because I had to stop my daughter from talking about all the things she loves in school every day at the dinner table. And that even with all the challenges her 1st grade teachers are now working on and having to deal with, my daughter comes home excited every day for the past 2 weeks about a science experiment about how to make eggs bouncy and how she's writing the instructions for them. But we are where we are, and we need to move forward. We need some reconciliation, and in a positive way. So the very real challenges that are occurring in Bridge Street and district-wide can be solved. One thing that all great teachers do is teach kids to take responsibility for their actions. They let people know that you're sorry, and they move forward in a positive direction. I think it would go really far in rebuilding trust in our community if the district leadership, including the school committee, publicly acknowledged that the inclusion program was inappropriately rushed and poorly rolled out, and that an apology is made for the pains it has caused students, families, and teachers. And I think it is also important, and remember, I am a union member, and I think it is also important that the Northampton Union, not necessarily the Bridge Street teachers, but the union, acknowledge and apologize for the unfairly publicizing their correctly filed grievance, as this publicity has unfairly done a huge disservice to all students, staff, and families in the Bridge Street community and has troubled the process. I'd also love to see the Gazette acknowledge and apologize for painting such an incomplete and misleading picture of our great school, because this is something that is a real problem district-wide, though it may be more extreme at Bridge. Then I hope we can all move forward on making a great school and an amazing school even better.
The next person signed up is Jonathan Brody.
Thank you all. Happy New Year, happy holidays to you all, to you, great staff at Bridge Street School. Really just appreciate what you do. Last time I got up here, I told you about Nate. He's doing okay. He's learning, but he's anxious. One of the things he's anxious about is his friends have been leaving the school. I think there's been upwards to about 9 of his friends have had to leave the 1st grade because of the challenges that this school year has faced. His teachers are working really hard, but they seem tired. They just seem really, really tired. And we're just at January. And obviously, I saw the article, and I can't really speak to the teachers' issues. But no matter kind of what someone chooses to believe and how much of it's true or not true, or where you stand on an issue, that's something that needs to be listened to. It goes the same for me as a parent and the other parents. No matter where you stand on an issue, no matter what you choose to believe, no matter what's actually true, they're real issues. And like I said last time when I spoke here, we need your leadership. We need it for funding, we need it for resources, and we need it for oversight. Because these are issues of our children, the youngest, the most vulnerable, the most innocent. And these are issues of social justice and equity. These are issues of social justice and equity. BSS has the highest rates of disability, of economic disadvantage, and of English language learning. We know that. And the mayor, you have committed yourself to social justice and equity in this term. Superintendent, you have committed yourself to inclusion, an issue of social justice and equity. Principal Chiquette, you have committed yourself to issues of inclusion. And we, in the committee, you all, by default, are the stewards of those commitments, of those obligations when it comes to the students of Northampton Public Schools, particularly of the Bridge Street School. And we need you to lead us through these obstacles, as Ronnie speaks to. We need you to have these obstacles become opportunities. We need you to turn the poison of this moment into the medicine of the future. So with that, just want to ask for your attention, your commitment, your presence, and your persistence to fulfill these obligations to our youngest, neediest, and the most vulnerable members of our community. Thank you.
The next person signed up, I'm having a difficult time reading your name, but the address is 809 Ryan Road in Florence. Sorry. I'm sorry.
My name's Susanne Strauss. I live at 809 Ryan Road. On December 15, 2017, this is a statement made by the Northampton Association of School Employees, of which I am a member. All Northampton Public School employees recently received a statement from the Northampton School Committee regarding negotiations for the full-time release of the NACE president from teaching duties. The NACE Executive Committee believes that the statement contains omissions, inaccuracies, and incomplete information that must be corrected. The school committee contended that, quote, it moved forward in good faith to see if a successor MOA could be reached, end quote. In fact, NACE sent a request to negotiate a successor MOA on May 1st, 2017. The school committee did not come to the bargaining table until June 29th, 6 days after all the contracts had been signed and school was over and all NACE members had left for the summer break. The timing seemed strategic and not in good faith. At that June 29th bargaining session, NACE negotiators were blindsided by the school committee's announcement that they no longer wanted to support any release time at all for the NACE president. The 26-member bargaining team had just spent 70 hours together over 10 months negotiating 6 collective bargaining agreements using an interest-based model rather than the traditional positional approach. Shockingly, the school committee did not feel compelled to approach NACE negotiators and let them know they were no longer prepared to support full-time release and try to work out a solution together. That was not good faith. It was betrayal. The school committee started that full-time release of the NACE president, stated that the full-time release of the NACE president was not, quote, the best expenditure of taxpayer money toward the education of our students, end quote. Their assertion that the district was shortchanged by $6,195 is a gross misrepresentation of the facts. No taxpayer money should have been used to pay for the release of the president. The first year of full-time release, 2016, NACE over-reimbursed the district by $24,000 because the school committee did not release the president from teaching until early November. The overpaid funds sit in a gift account and could have been used to fully cover and pay the benefits of the replacement teacher in 2016-2017 who did not receive health care benefits. The district remains in possession of the excess $24,000. The NACE Executive Committee asserts that the caretaking of children should also include the caretaking of those responsible for students in the district, and that a full-time release president is a cost-effective way to do such important work. This was the content of the 4 negotiation sessions. June 29th. Northampton School Committee negotiators informed NACE that they would no longer agree to any release time for the NACE president. August 10th, the first date that the Northampton School Committee negotiators made themselves available to NACE negotiators once they had met with their full committee on July 13th. They agreed to release time for the NACE president as long as NACE reimbursed the entire cost, pay, and benefits for the actual person elected president, as opposed to a flat rate similar to that used by most MTA large locals. They offered release in 20% increments to the degree that NACE could afford. NACE negotiators argued that this model would unfairly position candidates based on their role and experience in the district. August 16th. The Northampton School Committee position didn't change, so NACE agreed to reimburse the district for 40% release time for 1 year in order to reassess the release issue with member input. 2 days later, the Northampton School Committee negotiators reneged on their offer of part-time release and directed the president to return to teaching full-time in 10 days. October
Suzanne,
20.
your time,
Oh,
you can
thank
just
you.
wrap it.
Okay.
I mean, if
That's
you wanna
okay. We can get somebody else to do the.
If you wanna submit
That's
the
fine, that's fine,
statement,
that's
thank
fine.
The next person who's signed up is Heather Brown.
Thank you. I live at 113 North Maple Street in Florence, and I'll just finish the statement that Suzanne was making by NACE. I'm a NACE member and a building rep from the high school. On October 23rd, the school committee negotiators stated that an impasse had been reached and arbitration would be in order, and NACE negotiators agreed. However, the school committee team informed NACE that they needed to consult with council before consenting to arbitration, but then never responded to the NACE arbitration request. The school committee distributed to employees a statement dated November 30th, 2017, which was how NACE negotiators first learned of their position. The NACE Executive Committee believes it is extremely unfortunate that the Northampton School Committee has chosen not to agree to any release time for the president and to have done so in such a disruptive and disrespectful manner. Without release time, an equal partnership is virtually impossible, and the advocacy for high-quality learning and working conditions, educator professionalism and stability in the teaching force, and fruitful alliances with parents and community members. At its December 12th meeting, the NACE Executive Committee moved to file an unfair labor practice charge against the Northampton School Committee for regressive bargaining. This charge will be investigated and ruled upon by the Massachusetts Labor Relations Board. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. So that is the list that I have signed up to speak tonight. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in public comment? Okay, if you just would come to the podium. And again, if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Yes, thank you. I didn't get put my name down, so I appreciate that. My name is Katerina Costa. I live at Monroe Street in Northampton. Good evening. I'm Katerina, as I mentioned, and I'm the parent of a first grader at Bridge Street. While I would generally consider myself active in my children's education, I've actually never formally spoken up at or even attended a meeting like this, but I'm here tonight because I am concerned, frustrated, and disappointed with the WINS inclusion model rollout at BSS. A short version of our story is the following. I have a child who had a rather successful kindergarten year, but whose first grade could only be described so far as rocky. While there are children who have weathered the classroom chaos, noise, and disruptions better than my daughter, for sure, her particular history and disposition makes her infinitely more vulnerable to the kind of environment that she is surrounded by. Initially, early in the year, she was the recipient of 3 specific incidents of aggression, which seemed to have made a huge impact in her behavior and in her approach to school. She seemed to have lost her interest in learning and could not engage and be more participatory, or even find her place in the classroom. We see her, as of recent, working hard to try and engage herself. But just last night, and I was already planning to come to this meeting, while we were chatting about her day at school, which we try to engage her deeply about every evening, she described herself as being, quote, at the bottom of the class in terms of how she sees herself and how she thinks her teachers see her as a member of the broader community. This is a kid with tremendous intellectual potential, and I know I'm her mom, but there are third parties who would say the same. This model is failing her, and I am certain it is also failing other children with significantly higher needs than her as well. What has been done so far, in my opinion, is a Band-Aid. It is reactive, not proactive. The emergency meetings that were called in October, while appreciated, were just the beginning. We were told we would receive better communication, and that endured for a few weeks, much appreciated, in the form of memos in my daughter's folder, and I really was heartened at the reaction and the involvement at that point. But then it stopped. Just this week, I learned that there was yet another classroom change-up. There are 2 first-grade classrooms. There were 2 additional students brought into my daughter's classroom as a result of further attrition that has happened, which has been alluded to. The repeated changes in constellations are very impactful to my daughter in particular. I find it interesting that there was a discussion to start a third classroom in the fall, and for various reasons, I know that did not go through. And yet, some of the reasons that were given for that was that the change and the transition would be really negative. And my daughter has been in change and transition for 5 months. The classroom dynamic, continues to be really the most impactful factor for her. Here's what I would ask for in a few words. I believe we need better and consistent communication, a clear articulated commitment to improvement with the resources to back it up, as well as an acknowledgement that this model isn't working, again, to echo another parent. As it stands, I would ask the district to either bring in additional reinforcements or consider an alternate model. We owe it to our children. I believe this district and Bridge Street School can and should do better. Thank you.
Yes, if you want to just come to the podium, and if you could just state your name and address for the record, since we don't have it written down.
Yes, my name's Mary Johnson, 71 Ice Pond Drive, Florence. I haven't been to a meeting like this before either, so I'm just going to speak from the heart. I have a kindergartner who's new to the Bridge Street School, and I'm absolutely distraught. I have 3 children. I work full time. I work on social issues and climate change. I have lots of things to do. I shouldn't have to be here to advocate for a kindergartner who's getting hurt every day in her classroom, coming home and telling me because there's an aggressive child that's not being cared for properly, she's getting physically hurt. And the model that she's being taught is it's her responsibility to help take care of that child. And I am so frustrated and angry at how you are dealing with this. To remove 19 critical staff people all at one time and leave these wonderful teachers to have to fend for themselves. I went in the first couple of weeks of school to bring her personally to the classroom, multiple times witnessed 3 teachers in the hallways like it was a circus, trying to take care of the children who needed their support outside of the classroom, sprinting down the hallway. This is unacceptable in this society, in this town, where we have so many resources. There's 3D printers in these schools. The children have access to computers on a daily basis. They need teachers. They need special support for children who have special needs. My father has a PhD. He was a superintendent in Northampton for years. My mother was a teacher her whole career. I have taught in schools in Springfield where 90% of the children had no parent in the home. I've been in a classroom. I've taught teachers. This isn't a way to teach children. I've already spoken with the superintendent and with the teachers and the principal saying, I've already gone to another district. I will school of choice my child out next week if you can't solve this. So if there's other teachers that are also having the same problem, I didn't know anybody else was going through this. I was so happy and at the same time destroyed to see the article in the paper today because it's been totally blocked from my view that anybody else was having this experience. It was my problem. This has been going on for weeks, destroying my peace of sanity in my home for my kindergartner. This is her first experience with school. This is disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. She's a brilliant child. She also has had other psychologists who have just been remarked at how great she is. I'm not saying that because I think that she has great potential, but she can't focus because there's a circus going on in her classroom. It's not her teacher's fault. It's your responsibility to create an educational environment where every child has the ability to learn. This isn't appropriate. You need to act right now, or all these dollars that you thought you were saving are going to go to other districts where they realize the importance of having bodies in the classroom to care for children who have the needs that these children have in this school. I came to Northampton because of the diversity. I have a sister who has had an IEP plan and 3 nieces and nephews who use special services. I understand that inclusion is important, but you need to do it right, and this isn't okay.
Hi, Hi, Annie Salsic. I live at 378 Pleasant Street. I'll keep this brief. I wasn't going to talk, but my kid is doing great. Miss Mangonis' teacher is in the room, and he's doing well. But he comes home and is struggling with stories about what's going on. And what I see in him is that we talk to him about respecting and loving and inclusion, even if we don't use that word, right? But we're talking about it in an organic way. And I worry that what's happening here, as someone who's new to the area too, and my first kid, only kid, public school, and what I'm worried about is that there's this dichotomy being set up where if parents, I've been hesitant to ask questions or raise concerns about what's going on in the school because I don't want it to seem like I'm against inclusion, right? So I worry that the dichotomy here that's being allowed maybe, and I don't know why, is that you're either for inclusion and for that model and for the school, or you're not. And I don't think that's going to help anyone. So even comments about that the union shouldn't speak out to the paper, I don't agree with that. I think everyone should be speaking their story and talking about this. And what I worry here is that the people who are going to get the bad rep are the kids who are struggling the most in these schools. It's not my kid. My kid is doing well. He doesn't have an IEP. But who's going to get stigmatized are the kids that are getting left behind and are having their peers watch them as they flip out, as they lose it, as they hit, as they punch, and that's not good for them. And so the quote, I forget who it was who said this earlier, that inclusion not done well can feel more like restriction and can feel more like exclusion. And I really worry that that is going to be the long-lasting message if this isn't funded adequately, that our kids are going to learn it didn't work. Those kids couldn't succeed in my classroom. These kids can succeed anywhere if they're given the resources and the love and compassion. And I beg you to not let that be the story that my son learns, that these kids who are struggling learns. It has to be that we can do inclusion, like even the statement before about if this isn't the right model, it's not the right model. I believe wholeheartedly that this is the right model, just not the way it's being done now. So I ask you, as someone's new here, I want to stay in Bridge Street School. I've been really impressed by the administration, but what I hear going around Louis, and as he enters first grade, I'm terrified because of what I hear. Something's got to change, or else the message that the kids who are going to carry this on their backs and on their shoulders are the ones who are most vulnerable, and we can't let that happen.
I also did not plan to speak, but I'm moved to. I just want to say, as a teacher at Bridge Street School, and a teacher who's been in this line of working with kids with severe special needs since 1987, that first of all, I'm afraid there's a little bit of a misimpression being made in that last year the superintendent presented 3 budgetary models, not 3 inclusion models. 3 budgetary models that were then promoted as inclusion models. The planning for the inclusion had not taken place. The planning to roll this out had not taken place. This was an opportunity to say, oh, if we cut the programs, we will save money, and then the students will be in the classrooms, so they'll be included. But inclusion is not about where the student's being taught, whether they're in a small group in a smaller room that's quiet, with fewer distractions and less stimulation. That can be just as inclusive as being in the classroom. If they're in the classroom and they're not getting their small group instruction and they're overstimulated by the size of the 25 students in the classroom and the teacher is not able to deliver specialized instruction, that is not inclusion. If students are so stressed that parents come to meetings and their number one concern is anxiety, kids on plans, off plans. Anxiety, anxiety. I hear it from all the parents and I see it in the children's lives. I see it in their faces. I see students decompensating that I've worked with several years. I'm watching them getting to aggressive behaviors they did not engage in the past. But they are so stressed and unable to access their sensory breaks because there hasn't been staffing to bring them up or down, We can say, oh, honey, go on down to the sensory space. Let us know if nobody's there. Come right back and tell me if nobody can staff it right now because they're busy in the other part of the building. But I don't think that's the right way to handle it. I don't think that's safe to say to an 8-year-old, go on down and see if there's someone there that can offer you a sensory break. You know, these are the situations we're in. And I have been asked to leave my classroom, leave my co-teaching position in the middle of the school year, destabilize my classroom, and I'm not in the first grade of the kindergarten. I also want to disabuse people of the notion that these issues are only occurring in kindergarten and first grade at Bridge Street School. They have been occurring at every grade level, in every classroom. And I just want to make that clear. 2 things: that this is not a kindergarten, first grade isolated issue. And secondly, that it's a budget plan, it's not an inclusion plan. We're making the inclusion plan as we go, and we're doing the best we can with it with a lot less resources than we've ever had before.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, thank you very much for the public comment. Next item on our agenda is announcements. Are there any announcements from members of the school committee? Okay, hearing none. The next item on the agenda are the recommended actions. We have a consent agenda this evening. It includes the approval of minutes of the school committee meeting of December 14th, 2017. We have a request for a budget transfer approval, transfer of Unit A hourly rate funds to the correct accounts. We have field trip requests for JFK 8th grade Latin students going to New York City on May 17th, 2018, and the JFK 8th grade Spanish students going to New York City on May 17th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion made and seconded. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the consent agenda is approved. Now we'll move into the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda, and we'll begin with our student representative report from Elena Fragamini.
Hi, good evening to the committee and to those of you who are here tonight. My name is Elena Fragamini. I'm the student representative to the school committee. I'm a representative from the Northampton High School Student Union. This week is Social Justice Week at Northampton High, and this is a week that is truly focused on equity and social justice and on students' rights. Each of the 4 social justice clubs at our high school, the Environmental Club, the Students of Color Alliance, the Gender Sexuality Alliance, and the Feminist Collective, have a day throughout the week to hold events and prompt discussions, including videos shown by teachers during class. Just today was the Feminist Collective's day, and as I walked to school in the morning, throughout the hallway were banners that held student testaments to sexual harassment and sexual assault that they had been subject to. This is just one of the events that's happened throughout the week. Tomorrow is Intersectionality Day, which highlights the interconnectedness of the social justice movements as well as our identities. And there will be a panel of experienced social justice leaders that will speak to our students during the day. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. in the Northampton High Black Box Theater, there will be a special theater performance called Tenderness, which is a multilingual performance project highlighting social justice issues based on the performer's own lived experience. Tickets are free for Northampton High students and $10 for the community. I encourage you all to attend. This is a project that is made possible by a generous grant from the Northampton Education Foundation. And additionally, students next week will have an opportunity to be part of workshops with the performance group and to see additional performances. Students were excited this week to see a new vending machine in the first floor in one of our hallways, which is just part of the exciting ongoing changes in association with the Northampton High cafeteria. Also this week, TVs were set up in the cafeteria to play the transcript, Northampton High student news broadcast. And I just want to conclude by giving a congratulations to NHS seniors Lily Fowler and Odelia Foreman, whose artwork was accepted into the highly competitive Emerging Young Artists 2018 exhibit at UMass Dartmouth. This is an enormous honor. 66 pieces were accepted out of 823 submissions, and 3 were accepted from Lily and Odelia. So congratulations to them, and I want to give a thank you to the Northampton High Arts Department that continues to support our art students in their future education and continues to foster art at our public schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. The next item on our agenda is a vote, and this is a vote to accept gifts from the SOS Book Fund from the Northampton Education Foundation, and I believe Ms. Fallon will be presenting that and making the motion.
Thank you. So the Northampton Education Foundation SOS Book Fund is designated for textbooks, library books, educational materials, and their electronic equivalents. Since the funding of SOS in 1997, the fund has raised and distributed over $150,000 to the Northampton Public Schools. The principal sources of the fund are an annual appeal to the residents of Northampton and an annual plant and garden market held in May. Funds are distributed annually on a per capita basis per school after each school council has submitted spending plans and the NEF board has approved them. So I'd like to make a motion to accept with great appreciation a gift of $19,232.84 for the SOS Book Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So a motion has been made and seconded to accept this gift. Any discussion or comments? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the gift is gratefully accepted from NEF and the SOS Book Fund. Next is a gift for the Leeds PTO, from the Leeds PTO, and this is for teacher classroom supplies, estimated $6,350, $350, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Walczyk.
Yes, you've got a long list of gifts that are there, and there actually were two different gift donation sheets included in the packet, and through an oversight, we did not add those together. So rather than the total from the PTO being $6,350, it's actually $7,586. This includes supplies, furniture, scooters, iPads, and a number of things that are going to go across the whole school system to make a difference for the building.
Again, this is for the Leeds portion.
Leeds PTO.
Okay. So
I make a motion to accept the gift from Leeds PTO in the amount of $7,586 for teacher classroom supplies.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Okay, so that gift is gratefully accepted. Next item on the agenda is a gift from the NHS PTO. This is $6,740 for classroom and club projects.
Yes, again, you've got an itemized list of what the grants are for. It includes everything from speaker fees to supplies and equipment to field trips for the students, in the total amount of $6,740.
Move to accept the gift from the NHS PTO, $6,740 for classroom club projects.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that gift again is gratefully accepted. The next item is another gift from the NHS PTO, approximately $7,000 for 10 new HP computers for the redesigned first floor computer lab.
Yes, the PTO's agreed to work with the technology department for some reworking of the labs they're doing at the high school and donate money that will go towards approximately 10 HP computers.
Move to accept the NHS PTO, $7,000 for new HP computers for redesigned first floor computer lab.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? And again, that gift is gratefully accepted. Next, we have a vote on school choice participation. I will turn this over to Dr. Provost.
Thank you. This is a required annual vote for the schools district's continued participation in the school choice program. I believe the vote should be to not participate in the school choice program, which would be an affirmative vote to continue with the school choice program. Sorry, that's always confusing.
It is.
I learned that from Ms. Minnick.
It's true. Okay, so then the motion would be, the requested motion would be to
just continue to participate.
Move that we not continue within the school choice program.
Okay. Is there a second? And then, obviously, I guess the requested vote is to vote no to Mr. Downey's outrageous motion. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, so the noes have it, and we will continue with the school choice program. What's that?
We hope we wrote
I think so. I hope so. Our hearts were in the right place. So, okay, the next item on the agenda is the report of the Rules and Policy Subcommittee, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Fallon for that report.
Thank you. If you recall from last month, the first it's a second reading and a vote on policy CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. The policy is being updated to align with the state's new evaluation process. So I would ask that we move to approve policy CBI as amended.
So there's been a motion made and seconded on this update to our policy, and it's a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
The second reading and vote is on policy IJ. It's two separate votes, but policy IJ is a consolidation and revision of policies IJJ, IJK, IJM, and we did modify some of the selection criteria to make it more positive and inclusive, and I would move to approve policy IJ as revised.
Second.
So there's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any questions or discussion about the policy? Ms. Fallon?
I would actually, since our last meeting, I did speak with Dr. Cheevers and Dr. Provost about a possible amendment, and I would like to amend the policy in the second paragraph. I'll read the paragraph. The task of selecting instructional materials for programs will be delegated to the professional staff of the school system and include district-level administrators to ensure both vertical and horizontal alignment of the curriculum. So I'd like to add in that language of and include district-level administrators to ensure both vertical and horizontal alignment of the curriculum.
So that's,
so that it's consistent with our district improvement policy.
amendment.
Okay, so there's been a motion made and seconded to amend the policy that's before us. Any discussion about the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the amendment is accepted, and now we're back to the main motion. Any discussion about the question, the policy as it's been amended? Okay, all those in favor of approving the policy as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that one is approved.
Next, we will be voting on elimination of policies IJJ, textbook selection and adoption, IJK, supplementary materials and adoption, and IJM, special interest materials and selection, as we have consolidated them in the policy that you just approved, instructional materials.
Okay.
So I would move to eliminate policies IJJ, IJK, and IJM.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so any discussion about this deletion of these three policies? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so those policies have been eliminated. Next one on your docket.
So the last policy that it's a second reading, we'll be voting on is policy KCD. If you recall, it's a tiny change, but it seemed important in light of the questions surrounding our interpretation of the policy with the mural at Leeds School. And so we would just like to amend it that if gifts would involve permanent changes to school plans or sites, that changes will be subject to school committee approval. So I would move to accept policy KCD as amended.
Okay. Any discussion of the amended policy? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that is revised. Any other business from the Rules and Policy Committee? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have a series of, two third readings. These would be the third of 6 readings required under our rules. Third reading on the naming of the Leeds Elementary baseball diamond in honor of Jim Myas, as well as the naming of the Leeds Elementary playground pavilion in honor of Julie Clark. Mr. Meyer, did you want to add any more?
Just that as requested, that we maintain the confidentiality of both of these naming considerations until such time as they're revealed in May.
Okay. It's a secret. Okay, so that satisfies our third reading. We've got to keep it a secret for 3 more readings. So next we'll turn to our business administrator's report, and Ms. Walczyk.
Yes, you've got the financial report included in your packet, and as I outlined in the cover memo, basically the 3 areas we're currently running deficits on are the 3 same areas we've mentioned the last couple months, and we'll continue to monitor those. Earlier in the meeting, you did approve the budget transfer that was related to our collective bargaining agreement. Thirdly, as we have received for the past couple years, when the city received its reimbursement of last year's homeless transportation expenses, or McKinney-Vento as it's called, the mayor recommended to the city council, and they approved that supplemental appropriation be given to us in the amount of $19,499. So that has been added to our budget, and we would anticipate using it for both homeless transportation and transportation related to the displaced students who've come in from Puerto Rico, because we picked up some additional transportation around those students. Gifts from these under the $1,000 threshold that are accepted by the principals from the PTO. There were a number of them this month, but 6 of them were related actually to a dinner that was held back in December, I believe it was, for the displaced students and their families. Each of our PTOs donated $100 towards the cost of putting that dinner on. In addition, the PTO made a donation to JFK for the band. It was an anonymous donation to the PTO, who then made the donation to us in the amount of $1,000 for the band program. And Jackson had a donation from the PTO in the amount of $1,000 that will be used for an additional water filling station at the building. And the superintendent this month accepted 1 other gift from a group other than the PTOs, which was under $1,000, and that was a $500 donation from Grin and Barrett Photo Studios to the high school as part of our contract with the high school's contract with Grin and Barrett for student photos. They made a $500 donation to the high school to be used for related expenses. And then the last piece is you have in your backup the copies of the 2 warrants that have been signed by your representatives since the last meeting that total about $600,000 in expenses.
Okay. Personnel report?
Yep, it's short in the mid-year process. We had 2 hires this month, 1 separation, 2 retirements, and I will name them. We had the retirement of Patrick Fennessy, a custodian at Bridge Street School, and the retirement of Greg Kurtsetter, the tiered support specialist at Ryan Road School. And then we also had 3 promotions from people within the system moved into other, promotions or transfers, moved into other positions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Walczyk. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Provost.
Thank you. I will actually be agreeing with some of what was said in public comment tonight, and I will be taking issue with some of the other comments. Mr. Brody talked about the disparities that have grown up in student enrollment in the elementary schools in our district. He talked about Bridge Street School having the neediest population of any of our elementary schools. And that's true. That's something I want to agree with. Mr. Goldman said that it might be good on both sides to come forward with an apology. And so I'll tell you what I feel really sorry about. It's that for 3 years, when that inequity was building at Bridge Street, I was overseeing that. There were many people who asked me when I first came to Northampton and over the course of the first several years, why is it that we have 1 level 3 school? Why is it Bridge Street School? And an answer so obvious was right in front of me, and I didn't see it. And it was the piling on of special education programs within a single building. And it bothers me especially because I'd almost seen it the year we decided to break up preschool. Remember, I stood in front of the committee and I talked about the impact that having all of the preschool programs in the district housed in Bridge Street was having on the capacity of the building. And so I'm sorry that I allowed that to build up, and I'm sorry that unwinding it is obviously causing so much pain. That's sincere. But I also, in this discussion of reconciliation, need to talk about my own feelings and need to talk about some things that I think haven't been fair. So let me tell you, I've spent a lot of time at Bridge Street School, and there's a ritual that I've seen enacted over and over again in classrooms at the beginning of the day. Many of the classes read a poem. It's called You Are Another Me. It's a poem with a simple message. It says, if I do harm to you, I do harm to myself. But if I respect you, I respect myself. And I had declined public comment on the specifics of the level 3 grievance prior to tonight because I didn't want to impair the collaborative process of relationships that I had built with staff, and I certainly didn't want to disrespect staff. But NACE has chosen to violate the grievance procedures by sending its complaint directly to the media, so now I will respond publicly. And I'm sure my comments will damage some relationships and some trust, but if I allow the untrue portrayal of Bridge Street School to go unchallenged, then I'm not being trustworthy. Because I also agree with a lot of what many of the parents have said tonight about the good things that are happening at Bridge Street School. I really don't think it's fair for NACE to portray Bridge Street as unsafe for staff. This is not to say that violence never occurs. You've heard plenty of examples of it tonight. I've been at Bridge Street 37 times this year, including today, when 10 staff were absent from 13 classes due to professional development and illnesses, and learning took place nonetheless, with central office administrators and the literacy coach filling in for Bridge Street teachers. I have seen incidents of student aggression, but mostly I've seen teaching and learning. And the aggression I've seen has really not been different from the aggression that I've seen in other schools in Northampton or in other schools where I've worked. To provide some context, in the 3-year period between FY15 and FY17, Northampton Public School workers filed workers' comp claims resulting from student violence in a range of 26 to 46 incidents a year, with annual payouts ranging from $10,000 to $43,000 of worker comp claims resulting from student violence against staff. And in many of the years, Bridge Street has been the highest school. So far this year, there have been 19 worker comp claims filed for incidents resulting from student behavior district-wide. It's a rate that's comparable to prior years. I also really don't think it was fair for NACE to portray this as a good faith attempt to resolve issues at Bridge Street. I started my day yesterday at a scheduled level 2 grievance meeting at Bridge Street. After returning to my office from that meeting, I learned that the Gazette had called the prior evening requesting comment on the level 3 grievance it had received. So the newspaper had been notified we were at level 3 while I was still trying to work at level 2. That didn't feel like good faith. That felt like a sham. And even though the administrative team has reorganized the budget with the goal of prioritizing Bridge Street for redirected funds, and that's something that's been supported by all the other administrators in the district. I think that's important to note. Other schools have been going without in order to provide additional staff and resources for Bridge Street School. I do believe the original allocations were responsible. Bridge Street has the highest staffing levels in the district. We did that because we know it has the highest needs in the district. To give some context to that, Bridge Street has 53 fewer students than Jackson Street, but has 5 more ESPs. It has 46 students fewer than Leeds, but it has more licensed staff. It also has the smallest class sizes in the district, with 9 of the 13 classes having 18 students or fewer. And when we began receiving students from Puerto Rico, we deliberately decided to shield Bridge from those students as much as possible because we didn't want to add to the need at Bridge. Looking at caseloads, there are 8.5 students with IEPs for every special educator at Bridge Street. That compares to a 12-to-1 ratio at JFK, a 17-to-1 ratio at the high school, and about a 20-to-1 ratio statewide. Now, as reported by the Gazette, we are constantly working collaboratively with staff and families to build capacity at all of our schools. But it is true that we have new students all the time, and sometimes students who we already have present with new and more complex needs. And that requires us to make constant adjustments. I think in another time, teachers could set up systems at the beginning of the year with the expectation that they would continue to be effective for students throughout the year, or mostly effective for most students throughout the year, but that's no longer the case. We need to make many course corrections in order to make it from August to June. Sometimes we need to make course corrections to make it from Monday to Friday. One of the things that we've said is school systems are always under construction, and that's where that comes from. So if the reports of wanton student on staff violence were true, I guess the question that every member of Bridge Street School and the community as a whole would be asking, should be asking, is why they cannot create a safe environment when other schools have been able to do so with fewer personnel. But I'm not asking that question because, as I said, I cannot, based on my own observations, my own eyewitness observations, substantiate the stories of chaos reported by NACE. While I have reported and continue to report that there are many students with many challenges at Bridge Street and at other schools, I also feel that teachers are providing powerful learning experiences for those students, including many students who in prior years were excluded from those experiences. So my greatest disappointment is that I'm now faced with an article that begins with our association labeling my students as assaultive and ending with 3 paragraphs rehashing the dispute over full-time release for a president. And you can look in vain through all the paragraphs between those 2 bookends for a single word that affirms any student or any family or any of their accomplishments this year. Although the union says students are not at fault, it's hard to separate these statements from the negative impact that labeling any child, much less a kindergartner or a first grader, as assaultive must have on their ability to feel welcome and successful at school, as we've heard from parents. In fact, today, we've been contacted by families and by an employee who feel that the publication of this grievance has revealed personal family medical information. So I do think it was disrespectful. I do think it was deeply disrespectful for our association to talk about our students that way. So I'll conclude my remarks by suggesting that we add 2 lines to the poem at Bridge Street. The student is another me. If I do harm to you, I do harm to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Provost. The next item on the agenda is new business. We have no new business this evening. We do have future business and meeting dates. The Rules and Policy Subcommittee will be meeting on January 18th, 2018 at 3:30 p.m. in the Superintendent's office. We have a joint school committee and city council budget meeting on January 30th, 2018 at 7 p.m. here in the JFK Community Room. The school committee meeting with the Student Advisory Committee on February 8th, 2018 at 6:45 p.m. in the JFK Community Room. Our regular school committee meeting on February 8th, 2018 at 7:15 in the JFK Community Room. And then our school committee meeting of February 27th, 2018 at 7:15 p.m. in the JFK Community Room. So that is our future meeting and meeting dates. And then the final item on the agenda is the request for an executive session, which I'll ask the vice chair to make.
Make a motion, a request for an executive session in the JFK Principals Conference Room under Massachusetts General Law Open Meeting Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to hold a grievance hearing, whereas an open session would have a detrimental effect on the school committee's negotiating position.
So there's been a motion made to enter an executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. So the vote on this would be a yes or a no. Yes to enter executive session, no to not. And I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. It's a required roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Aye.
Yes.
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 Yes. So I do have to inform the public that we will now be moving into executive session, because to have this grievance hearing in public would be detrimental to the school committee's position. I also need to inform the public that we will be adjourning directly from executive session and not returning to open session. So with that, we will now move into the executive session.